Today is April 15th. We are here in Austin, Texas at Lake Austin, and today I'm interviewing
Cindy President. Well, I was very fortunate in that I was born and raised here on Lake Austin. My parents moved to Lake Austin in 1956, and shortly thereafter had me in 1963. My grandma went to the University of Texas, as did my dad, and so it was very important to them to stay in Austin. And my dad loved the water, and he fell in love with this lake in the mid-50s. Actually, when he was in college, he fell in love with the lake, and after some different business opportunities, was able to land a job here in Austin and move my mom onto this lake in 52, and then in 56 they moved to the home that they're still in today. And when I was born, my parents were running a very off the beaten path little lodge called Lake Austin Lodges, which is now a world-class destination spa resort right here on Lake Austin. And when I was born, that was actually my first stop on the way home from the hospital, was Lake Austin Lodges. And you could probably say that my love for the water started then. So growing up on Lake Austin, especially in the early 70s, in the area that we grew up on, was at that time the Steiner Ranch, and it was very remote. There was not anyone out here. It was just a couple kiddos and a ranch with cattle, and growing up we were working cattle and riding horses on the ranch, and the water sports were really our go-to for recreation and activity. It became social because people from Dallas and Houston would migrate to Austin in the summers, and they'd bring their kids. So most of our summer friends were kids who weren't even from this area, weren't even from Austin. And then our school friends were the kids that we got to hang around with during the school year. I ended up skiing for the University of Texas kind of as a fluke. I had offers to play volleyball in college, and kind of at the last minute decided I wanted to take up a lifetime sport. And so my parents had friends that lived on the lake that introduced me to competitive water skiing towards the end of my high school career. And then when I started at the University of Texas, I ended up meeting a couple people, and they're like, you need to come water ski for us. And I was very fortunate that I did that, because it really was the beginning of a lifelong affinity for the sport. Having met my husband on the University of Texas water ski team, we've really only known water sports as a business and a recreation our entire lives. And for that reason, we kind of joke that we've never really worked a day in our life. I met my husband at the airport when I was flying back from an intercollegiate all-star tournament, and I had a huge bag of my skis for 3 events, which were 4 skis and all the equipment and suits and ropes and gear. And then I had some of my girlfriend's things tossed in there. And so it was this huge bag, a body bag with 5 bodies in it, is kind of what it looked like. And I was dating somebody at the time who was a Baylor Bear, and he didn't show up to pick me up at the airport coming home from that tournament. And so one of my friends who was at the tournament with me, her boyfriend was picking her up, and he came with his roommate, and the roommate was actually Steve, my husband now. And he's like, hey, you need a ride home? And I said, sure. So he threw all my stuff in the back of the truck and told me to get in the back of the truck, and took me to Jester Dorm over at UT, and then carried all my stuff up to the 9th floor. And we kind of hit it off that next summer, and we dated for 6 years, and now been married for almost 31. What I loved about 3-event water skiing, what I still love about it, I still go out and slalom whenever I can, was the exhilaration, the speed. it was a great adrenaline rush. Slalom skiing still is. You get that speed and that whip effect when you build the power and load the line from it. We got to go to many places across the country. And at that time, a lot of the ski tournaments were in small areas where real estate wasn't very costly, and people would build water ski lakes out in these little areas, rural areas. And we got to really meet some amazing people, visit some wonderful parts of the country, and experience some great culture of US. We ended up at SeaWorld. I had blown out my knee trick skiing and went through surgery and recovery that had happened when I was coaching and training at a water ski school and training facility in Louisiana. And so it took me like a year and a half to come off of that injury, and lo and behold, I did it again the next summer. And that time chose not to have surgery on it. It wasn't quite as bad, but there were still tears, but we knew that they would self-heal to a point that I could still compete and be active. But that was a big mental blow, so I took some time to mentally recover from that. And we were running boats for a manufacturer, and part of our agreement in order to have a boat to train behind was that we were to take it to tournaments and events that they needed us to take it to. So they called and said, hey, there's a tryout for the new SeaWorld of Texas is coming into town. Can you take your boat out to Lake Medina and let them use it for the day? So we did. We took it out there. We ended up hanging out on the houseboat with some of the crew that came in from SeaWorld of Florida and SeaWorld of Ohio while they were out doing tryouts and using the boat, and just got to chatting, and the guys were like, why aren't y'all trying out for it? And we're like, we've never show skied. We're really into 3-event skiing. I knew I didn't want to wear a tutu and swivel ski like the show ski girls did. I'm not a tutu girl, and ended up doing it. So we ended up going to Cypress Gardens and training over the holidays, and coming back and opening the park at SeaWorld of Texas before it even opened. So we were there training before there was water in the lake, when they were bringing all the whales in and the big lifts and hoists and putting them into their aquarium. So it really was an interesting time, and it was some great memories, and again with some great folks that we're still super close to. So opening a huge amusement park like that from ground zero was quite the feat. We went in before the park was even open for people, and again, there was no water in the lake, there weren't even any animals there, and it was a water ski show built from the ground up. So they brought in the best of the best and their training teams, and it truly was a production of choreography, learning how to dance, creating the ski act. So not just knowing how to ski and knowing how to perform behind the boat, but then when they had the choreography and the theme for the show, they would throw things at us like, okay, we're gonna make this huge 40-foot pull along behind the boat. We need 10 of y'all to figure out how to ride it together. Or we're gonna have a barge come out with 8 girls on it, and we're gonna throw you all a rope, and as the barge is turning, we're gonna pull you all off to water ski off of it at the same time. So there were lots of things and acts we had to figure out, and that's probably where I get my spirit, even with my kids these days, of try it, go try to ski on it and figure out how to do it, because we learned through that show that that anything is possible. There's a lot that's possible, but if you put your mind to it, you can figure out how to ski on almost anything. So throughout my entire life, I've always used water as a recreation and sport. I grew up with it as recreation and fun and family and social opportunities, and then turned it to competitive and sporting opportunities. And even when my husband and I met and got to a point where we were building our own careers, water was the basis for our businesses. So water has always been a huge part in the main focal point of our lives. And through the years, knowing that we used it for recreation and sport, we'd take people out on the water who were having a bad day or a bad time, and we figured out that organically we were using it for people who were looking for either healing from stress or illness or loss, and it was just kind of organically happening that people would either call us or we'd go, hey, I know you're having a bad time or a bad day, let's get you out on the water. So that was happening just because of our ability to get people out there, and because that's just what we did and what we knew. And when we had a friend that was killed in 2015, we realized that our friend, as a first responder, had been using the water the entire time, the entire 7 years that she was part of our family, to help clear her mind from difficult events or difficult shifts when she would have to make a call for something horrific over and over and over again. And her first thing she always wanted to do was get out on the water. And when she was killed, we had friends of hers come to us and say, hey, we know Kristen paddled for her peace of mind. Can you get us on the water? Because this has been very difficult for us. So there was a turning point in our lives in which we were organically or naturally getting people on the water who were dealing with these different issues, to a point where we started intentionally using it. We ended up co-founding a foundation that intentionally gets individuals in, near, and on the water for positive mental, emotional, and physical wellness impact. And there's a huge science behind that. I used to quote an author, his name's Wallace J. Nichols, and his science and his work and all of the data that he's captured in his book called Blue Mind. And a few years back had a great opportunity to befriend him and become an ambassador of Blue Mind. And it truly is just a collaborative science of what happens to the mind when you're in, near, and on the water. And we utilize that science as a profession in our business. We utilize it within our foundation. I utilize it within my work, utilize it within my family. And that intentionality of water being a medicine is a huge opportunity for our communities, for our first responders, for our military. So with our foundation, the intentionality of taking people out on the water or providing them experiences near the water is a huge no-cost, low-cost benefit. It's something that is actually being looked upon by the medical field, by the counseling fields, of a prescription, if you will, of individuals who can utilize a natural, evidence-based alternative therapy to be in, near, and on the water. 5 years ago, when one of my best friends, Kristen McLean, was killed in an accident with a rescue incident on the Greenbelt. She was a flight medic nurse with Starflight. We had started the year prior to that an event called Get Out Girl Paddle Jam, and it was all about inspiring and empowering women and girls of all ages to get out on the water and to connect and to build confidence and to support one another, and a great opportunity of being in nature as well as being on the water. And Kristen was killed that next year, and it was a big decision for all of us of if we continue that and the heartstrings that go with continuing on with something that you've lost somebody very near and dear to you that was involved with it. But of course the answer is obvious. You do continue on, and you do it in their legacy and in their memory. And so this year will be our 6th year of hosting that event. And in addition to paddling in memory of Kristen, we've also befriended a wonderful family with the Ricky and Mason Hollis family. And they lost a Travis County first responder, Jessica Hollis, September of 2014. It was only 6 months before Kristen's accident. And Kristen and Jessica, as the crow flies, probably lived, 15 miles apart, but utilized the same body of water in the same area for their own personal mental and emotional wellness. And now we paddle in both of their honor and memory. The event has grown into a surf and paddle jam, and it still embraces women and girls of all ages to get them on the water, but we do that in memory and honor of Kristen and Jessica, who were two amazing Get Out girls themselves. And it's a precious time of bringing women together on the water. The guys assist and serve on land, and we paddle in honor of those two amazing women and so many others that join us. As someone that's been involved in the health, fitness, and wellness industry for an entire career, about 5 years ago I started saying that the next 5 years were going to be some of the most exciting times, because I felt that in my life it was going to be the first time we started talking about mental wellness, and that is exactly what is happening. That conversation about mental wellness and taking that stigma away is no longer a taboo conversation. And having spent an entire lifetime in nature and on the water as a way that helps mental and emotional wellness, it helps you be mind strong, it helps that mental fitness, to be able to use something that's so natural, and when the conversation now is so ripe, it's a tool that it's just a blessing to share with others, and it's a great opportunity to share with our community. A question I don't get very often is, what about legacy? You talk a lot about what you've done in the past and what you're doing now. Well, nobody really has ever asked what that legacy might look like. And when I first met Wallace J. Nichols, Jay, as I call him now as a friend, I remember him saying one of the most beautiful things you can pass on to your child is a love for the water. And I think if I leave any legacy, I want it to be that love for my kids, that they realize water is their go-to, or can be their go-to when times are tough, or when the world gets rough, or when life gets difficult, that they intentionally seek out the water and will always have that available to them.